extremely overwhelming. For today's conversation, we are not giving you easy questions, but what we're hoping today is to dig into genetic testing. So to start, could you please help us understand the difference between germline testing and somatic testing and why they should both be considered when someone's diagnosed with breast cancer?
Yep. So this is a great question. And I think this is absolutely fundamental because this is where a lot of confusion happens, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that cancer is a genetic disease, right? If you start with just kind of basic cell biology, cells grow and divide, and we have genes that control that process. And when the genes work the way they're supposed to, the cells grow and divide and stop when they're supposed to. When the genes don't work the way they're supposed to, then cells get the ability to grow and divide out of control. They don't stop when they're supposed to stop. And then you get a tumor in a very basic, kind of simple term. So when you read cancer is a genetic disease, what it means is that something has changed those genes that control that process and led to this tumor forming just from a cell growing out of control. The question before us today and always is, where did that change in the gene come from? It can either be that you were born with it, okay? So you came with some change in one of these genes that controls that process that you inherited. And so it was already there when you were born, and it makes you more susceptible to then go on and develop a tumor sometime in your life. Those are germline mutations. And the way I like to think about it or tell people to think about it is, first of all, the word line is in it, so you can think about family line.
Mm-hmm.
And really, germ means sex cells, reproductive cells. So it means these are mutations that are passed down through families. That's germline. So anytime you hear we're germline testing, that means that we're looking for the changes that happened in those genes that you came here with by way of inheritance through your family. Now, when we talk about the other set, and a lot of terms can be used to describe this. Somatic is the one you use, which is absolutely correct. You might also hear genetic testing, genomic testing, NGS, next-gen sequencing. You know, all of those terms mean the same thing. And that is, we want to see what happened in that cancer cell specifically. So we're taking that cancer cell, we're looking at the genes in that cell and looking for the mutations in that cell. So it wasn't that you were born with certain genetic mutations in place. Stuff happened along the way. Stuff happens, right? The stuff is what we call carcinogens. Okay, so when you hear this is carcinogenic, this is a carcinogen, what we mean are things that can cause damage to DNA that can lead to these changes in the cell. And so when we're looking at genomic testing, we're just looking at that cancer cell to say, oh, these are the mutations that happened in these specific genes that cause this cell to now grow out of control and become a tumor. And so I think, and I hope that sheds some light on it. But whenever you hear germline, we're talking about your family line, what you were born with. Anything else is what happened to that cell once you got here that caused it to inherit, not inherit, see, I already said that wrong, that caused it to have mutations to grow out of control and to form a tumor. The other point that I want to make is that most cancers are actually not inherited. So when we talk about germline, depending on the study, only 5 to 15% of cancers are actually inherited. So the majority of cancers happen because of genetic mutations that have happened along the way in the course of living, in the course of your life, and are not heredity. They're not hereditary. You weren't born with them. Now, I think we're going to talk more about why it's important to do germline testing even though it's not the majority of cancers. But I just wanted to make that clear from the start. Did
Thank
that
you.
help?
No, it does. It's a very complicated topic, but you explained it very well. I think very in a way that's very attainable to patients. So thank you. And I love the tip of the